Hello everybody and welcome back to the Overlap Breakdown channel, and today we're here to cover what to expect from Roberto De Zerbi as he's now joined Spurs on a long-term contract to try and lead them out of this relegation battle that they currently find themselves in. And this is now the third time we're previewing a manager for Spurs this season. And yeah, before we get into this, obviously, a lot of the people who watch these pieces, it was actually 82% last time I checked, aren't subscribed to the channel. So please do subscribe to the channel. It really does help us out a lot. And if you've seen the McLaren interview this week that went out on the channel, it will help us do much more things like that. So obviously on this channel, we do try and take a look at the finer details of the tactics, the way it looks, what to expect from him on the pitch. To me, this is a massive gamble. Straight away, I'm gonna go to the stuff that isn't the football first. And this is a massive gamble. I think everyone knows it's a massive gamble. The contract that's currently being reported is that he's been offered a very, very long-term contract in terms of 5 years. They're offering him a ridiculous amount of money to come in. And to me, it appears that this is a last-ditched attempt to get the best coach available to lead this team out of the relegation zone. And then obviously, their plan is that if he gets this right, they can keep him long-term and hopefully build something. Now, my opinion on De Zerbi is that he's a wonderful coach, and I do think he has influenced a lot of, major elite coaches. His ideas are very much used in today's football, and I will go through why that is the case, and some of the stuff he does is brilliant at I remember watching Sassuolo, I remember watching Shakhtar Donetsk, obviously Brighton when he went there, I've even watched his Marseille team. And through the past few years, he is incredible in terms of what he's managing to do. The problem is that his resume doesn't really stack up with how influential he is in the game in terms of he has coached, yes, at Brighton, at Shakhtar, at Sassuolo, Marseille, but they are not an elite level club, and I'm talking Big Six club, and this is a big move for him. And I think the scrutiny that he's already arriving into the job with, in terms of the stuff that he's going to have to do at Spurs in terms of winning points, right away the pressure is on, and it's a pressure that he won't have faced before. And I think that straight away needs to be addressed, because similar to how we've talked about Michael Carrick, Liam Rosenior, them managers who are stepping onto that big of a stage, they need to have that presence, that personality. And for me, that's where especially Thomas Frank didn't succeed, because the Spurs fans could not resonate with his personality. They could not get a connection with him because there was too much pressure at times. Unfortunately, Roberto De Zerbi has a past career of being tetchy with boards in terms of being spiky and being a little bit hard to work with. He had a lot of say over the player recruitment at Marseille, which has never really happened at that club before. And he's a very chest out, big personality in the dressing room. And I do think that is the case. I do think that there will be clashes, don't get me wrong. I do think the long-term plan is something that is a bit far-fetched in terms of when you look at his career, you look at what's gone on, how long is he going to stay there, how is the relationship going to be with the board, given what's already happened. And I don't know. The one thing I can say is that he is a good coach, and he's a coach that, in my opinion, has got great ideas, and they have been used. And yeah, I want to really get into some of the stuff that he's done. And now we've talked about all of the outskirts, I want to simply focus on his football and why, for me, the football is really good. So to start that, I'm now going to throw you on into the Microsoft Copilot segment just to run through what he did at Brighton that made his stock so high at the time. And then after that segment, we will go through his wider tactical philosophy. This segment is brought to you by Microsoft Copilot as part of a partnership with the Premier League. Okay, now moving on into our segment for Premier League Companion powered by Microsoft Copilot, we are now going to ask it if we can see some of the decent managerial details of Roberto De Zerbi's stint at Brighton. So we can say, can you provide a detailed rundown of Roberto De Zerbi's managerial reign at Brighton? And it gives us back absolutely loads of information. So De Zerbi was Brighton and Hove Albion head coach from the 18th of September 2022. He left by mutual agreement in 23-24. And we can see some of his best stuff that he did when he was at the club. So league finish, 6th in his first season, Brighton's highest ever Premier League finish, and then qualified for European competition for the first time. He also reached the FA Cup semi-final, lost on penalties to Manchester United, I remember that well. And the memorable results section, we got the 3-3 against Liverpool. in his first match, a 4-1 victory over Chelsea, a 6-0 win over Wolves, 3-0 over Arsenal, 1-0 over Manchester United, a 1-1 draw with champions Manchester City that actually secured them Europa League qualification. And we can see from his team-wide attacking metrics, to summarise that season, they actually had the third most goals in the division at that point, the most shots, which is insane for a Brighton team, most shots on target, expected goals second, average possession second, touched in the opposition box third. And then when we roll that on into the following season, we can see a little bit more about their European run. And then obviously he announced his departure by mutual agreement and then obviously went to Marseille. Now, Roberto De Zerbi for me is a really strange one because his ideas are some of the best I've seen come to the Premier League. And I think managers have spoken openly about what he does in terms of baiting the press in that 4-2-4. Now, this has obviously been a unique selling point, and teams across the Premier League and Europe now use this with this short distribution build-up, dropping people into the centre and then getting these outside to inside runs from the wingers when a press is pulled on. And it's a game of cat and mouse, really, asking the centre-halves, say these two are the centre-halves here. The whole game is, are them two centre-halves going to follow these two players who drop off the centre line in, or are they going to remain back? Because you get two things. If they step up, the wingers come in behind, and if they don't step up, then you've got a numerical advantage in the centre. And that somewhat changed the way Premier League football was played when De Zerbi was in the Premier League. And managers like Pep Guardiola have, praised his ideas. Liam Rossini, a Chelsea manager, massively praised his ideas when he was in France. But he didn't have a really good start at Brighton, but he had incredibly hard fixtures. And we're talking about how fast can Roberto De Zerbi influence and coach his players to play that style of football that he's so well known for. That is his USP, the football. The unique selling point is the way he plays football. But is that football the one that's going to keep them up? And is that football built for relegation scraps? I don't know. I don't know yet. 30 seasons of data all at your fingertips. From every moment that makes you a fan, from your club's history to your favourite players, go to the Premier League Companion powered by Copilot in the Premier League app. Okay, we're back, and now it's time to look deeper at some of the ideas that I've just pitched to you in terms of why is he known for being this influential manager. So, this has been a mainstay at pretty much all of his clubs. So Sassuolo, Shakhtar, Brighton, Marseille. He's had this principle in terms of the structure, in terms of his principles when coaching, what he wants in the build-up phase. Now, he has adapted to different clubs in terms of the personalities and the characteristics that he has. Now, the idea in this 4-2 build-up is to work these small space combinations and the third man runs and the third man combos. So, if we can imagine a team goes man-to-man against a De Zerbi team like this, what happens is when the ball is filtered to one side, say we go here, and it's usually always the keeper sliding the ball to one of the centre-halves, then we open up angles. So what we're looking for is if the body orientation is pointing towards, say, left-back like this player looks to jump, and then all of a sudden, when it comes to man-to-man, they are looking for that third-man combo. And what that means is that this is a third-man combo. They are accessing the third man through the man-to-man pressure. Now, I will say, a lot of people have been worried about how quick can he come in and make it stick. Now, I will say, I have watched his first game at Marseille, his first game at Brighton. The ideas do come to life very, very fast, and I do understand a lot of the reservations about it because he's got to go in and get points. We cannot forget this when we're talking. I know a lot of Spurs fans will be saying that. But this, I think, you'll see. You will see. He will coach this element of a Spurs team. So why is this so unique? Well, basically, he is somewhat playbooked build-up play. He has made a system where if they press from a certain angle, they know how to access certain lanes. And if you don't press man-to-man, they will find the spare man through this third-man combinations. And the amount of times that they're able to do this and manipulate is really, really good. And the amount of times I watched his team play Liverpool, City, them bigger teams with lesser players and play through was really, really exciting to watch. He made Højbjerg incredible at Marseille. I think he's actually in the team of the season for Ligue 1 so far. He's a very, very unique, profiler in terms of the way he uses his midfielders. He had Alexis McAllister and Moises Caicedo at Brighton, and we will go on to speak about the profiles that are needed to do this. But they are very interesting in terms of the way they use body positionings, in terms of the way they use dropping one in like this to create these situations where he's got to follow. Now, on the board, how I've got it set up right now, they are trying to open up different lanes. So when he's moving from club to club, Sometimes at Brighton, we've seen this overplaying in the centre like this. So we've seen all of this between the centre halves, these bounce passes from left to right to the keeper to work around that one-man press like that. Now, at Marseille, they very oftentimes actually hit the front two. Now, something really unique happens with the front two, and I'm going to throw it up on your screen just so I can show you. So on this screen right here, we've got Marseille against PSG after 30 minutes, and we can see the similar shape as we're talking about in the build-up play right now. So we've got 4 with the 2 centre-halves split very wide on the box. The full-back's quite narrow, the midfield 2 on the corner of the D like that. And then we've got a flat line of 4. Now, they're against PSG, and PSG have gone completely, they've gone kind of hybrid with that one sitting in midfield there. You can see, I think it's Fabian Ruiz. Now, on the second screenshot I've got right here, you can see that the goalkeeper has played directly through the centre of the pitch to go into the 2 centre-forwards. And as they've dropped off the last line to entice that pressure from the centre-halves, the 2 wingers look to narrow and spin in behind. So they are taking advantage of the space that's left in behind by the centre-halves when they go up to press. So I've just shown you there what it looks like a little bit more at Marseille. Now, in my opinion, I think Tottenham Hotspur's squad suits that little bit more, playing off Dominic Solanke into midfield, then carrying the ball, using the runs in behind, all that sort of stuff. That's what I think you'll see more of. Now, De Zerbi's football, when in full flow, looks magnificent for a couple of reasons at Brighton, etc. And that's because in open play, when it's not with the goalkeeper, it's a bit more pushed back, so it's a bit more like this. What they often use is the goalkeeper as the +1, and that renders presses useless because you can't press man-to-man if the goalkeeper is included in a team like this. So it's 11 versus 10, as you can see. Now, what happens is oftentimes we are looking for, you can call it an S pattern, you can call it a ladder, you can call it an escape pass, everything. We're looking for body orientation, and this is really, really technical, and I don't want to spend all the video doing this, but this is his selling point. When a player drops in like this, we like to create these staggered lines through the midfield, as you can see on the board like now. They probably look a bit more like that. Now, what that creates is basically a diagonal pattern through the opposition's block to access. So if we can imagine body orientation, we can imagine that these players have all got faces. This player is looking at the keeper, and this player has got his back facing the back pressure like this. So he's looking over here. So what they're looking for is all in synchronization. We're looking for him, drop deep, bang. That entices that bang. He spins. He's already ready to receive that pass with his orientation. He's already facing the play. Bang. One touch, bang. And then they're looking for them brief moments of space to capitalise on, to run through. And when they get this space, when their centre-half's just a little bit off in terms of the distances to press, then they can push on into the last line. Then we can spin in behind with our narrow forwards. That's what happens. Now, another thing they also do, which I didn't actually show you on that Marseille example either, is in the build-up like this, say it's at the goalkeeper, they like to go direct from the centre-halves even when the build-up is enticed in a third-man combo. So we can see now, a little bit more of a different example. The press is worked on. What happens is this player shuts off the press like this to close down the keeper, get rid of that +1. The keeper will go bang straight into the midfielder. They'll have pressure on the back. We go first time to the open man here, 3-man bang. Now, what you gain off that third-man combo is this lane. And we can imagine, we've seen Danny Welbeck and Evan Ferguson in particular do this at Brighton. If you have a more mobile forward who is good back to goal, I'm looking at you, Dominic Solanke, then what we can have is these moments where he drops deep and asks the same question of that centre-half. Are you going to follow me? And if he doesn't follow you, then you're out. And that is why De Zerbi's football has such a unique selling point, simply because of how well he coaches this element of the game, how well patterned his first third is. And it's not... Sometimes it can be slow, and I'll go on to talk about why it's rendered a little bit useless in certain games when they step out onto teams and they actually need to go up the pitch and play in this half of the football pitch. But in the first third, that is why so many managers love him. That is why, because he has so many different solutions to different pressing shapes, to different scenarios, to different centre-halves, to different midfield constructions, and he's used it across multiple clubs. Marseille, it was different to the one at Brighton. Sassuolo, it was different to the one at Marseille. Everything is different, and it's built around the characteristics of the players. And I think there are certain options he's already shown to be able to coach in his career so far that suit Tottenham Hotspur. So now I'm going to push it on into the final third and show you what it looks like when he does get up the pitch and escape up the pitch. If you're enjoying the video and want more tactical analysis and podcasts, please press the subscribe button below and hit the bell to enable post notifications. A few of the problems I obviously have with this is the profiles that Spurs have to offer. Now, I will say, some of the bits I do like. I actually quite like the forward four in terms of when I look at De Zerbi's attackers, and I like the way they spin in behind, the way they dribble inside with the pitch, the way the strikers come deep for the ball. I think Dominic Solanke has that ability to hold up the ball. But when I look at the back four and the midfield two in there, and when I'm looking at Brighton teams when they had Moises Caicedo and McAllister, I'm looking at even the Sassuolo team, which had Manuel Locatelli. I'm looking at teams that have them conductors, them players who can play like that in through midfield and have the intelligence to play. Spurs haven't recruited for that, even in January. You know, they've got Gallagher, Palhinha, Bentancur, Archie Gray, Lucas Bergvall, who are more them types of midfielders. Pape Matar, of course. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens there, especially with Vicario as well, someone who's been a bit error-prone on the ball. Kinski after the Atletico Madrid game, a little bit error-prone on the ball as well. And Dragusin, not really a technical first centre-half. Now, if Spurs can keep the majority of their players fit, which is a massive if, I think you will naturally see a uptick in performance levels and because of that, results. So I think if you get something that's like, I think Kinski's a better passer of a football than Vicario, but we've seen Vicario do it under Ange. But I don't know how long this situation's going to work with Vicario in there. But imagine you've got the Romero, Van de Ven, Udogie, Pedro Porro, and then one of maybe Archie Gray, Bergvall in the centre. So let's say Archie Gray, because I think he's better on the turn. I think he's maybe a better football player as well. And then next to him, I'd probably have a Pape Matar, someone who provides that little bit of steel, that ability to, if the ball is going into Xavi Simons and Dominic Solanke from them straight balls through from the goalkeeper or centre-half, he can run off the shoulder. I often said this quite a lot when I was talking about Sarr under Frank, under Tudor. I think he's got a really unique profile that has to be used. I think it's similar to Gallagher. I just love the way he gets from box to box, and I love the way he can eat up space, win the defensive contributions in his own half, carry the ball. He's not a technical first passer, no. I don't think he'll be the first option on the ball, no. But I do really like him, and I do think he is a good player. Similar to Gallagher, I think they've got uses. But Palhinha can also do a job there, of course, and I think he will look for that solidity in the centre to first shore it up and get points. But I think when you look at the centre-halves, you look at the midfield profiles, I think it looks a little bit worrying to see how they're going to use this build-up shape. This build-up shape does change. He has sometimes at Marseille and even at Brighton, they do sometimes commit 5 into the last line, whether it's in open play or in deep build-up. So we can imagine that if they want to get 5 across the last line like this, sometimes a full-back does tuck in and pushes on. So we can imagine if this is Udogie's side, Porro's side. I'd like Porro to sit a little bit deeper because he's got them longer stretches. But if you can imagine that this is Udogie, sometimes they build up like this with 5 on the last line and then it shuffles across. So we can have Van de Ven, keeper steps up like that, and you get that same 4-2, maybe against a more passive build-up. But then you can obviously get this situation where if they're going man-to-man across your back line, you've got that spare man down this side with the keeper joining in. So a lot more riskier, which is why it's a massive say in terms of what he's coming in to do with the squad he's got available. It's very risky, but the ideas you can see are very bright and very just modern. I can't explain it. They're just good ideas. And I think if they can work, it looks great. And obviously everyone will know that the keeper or the centre-halves put the studs on the ball, they roll it, they entice the pressure. And once a player jumps, they can play around like that. And that is their whole thing. Now, when Thomas Frank first joined, I said that if he does like to play around the 6-yard box like that, they did it at City quite often in the early parts of the season where they beat them, then they can do it. Ange Postecoglou, you know, put a mentality in this team to play, to get it through and play. There's a video of him shouting on the sideline saying, get the ball down and play, stop going long. And I don't know if they've still got that muscle memory. I'm not sure if the squad profile is even the same. They're still lacking a James Maddison, someone who can take the ball in the half turn. He's not going to return. But for me, I don't really see De Zerbi changing that. And it's up to Spurs fans to decide if they think this is risky enough to not try it or to try it. If it's too risky, what's the second option? I don't think De Zerbi has really got much else in terms of the build-up. In the final third, there are more tweaks when it comes to the positioning. So sometimes he gets a diamond in there. I was watching his Marseille team. Sometimes he gets a diamond in there with sort of one sat behind, and that obviously pushes the opposition back. You get a lot more numerical dominance when you push up the pitch like this. And sometimes we can look like that. But I will say, I've watched the Marseille, I've watched Brighton, I've watched a lot of teams. There is a predicament with Roberto De Zerbi's football that is, if their whole unique selling point is that enticing of the build-up to play around that high pressure, a lot of people say, well, just don't press them. And that, for me, is where De Zerbi's football gets a bit stale and it gets a bit too positional and it gets a bit too slow and too boring, because you will have moments where the opposition is refusing to pressure, refusing to jump out, and they're just stood there, and your centre-half's got his foot on the ball waiting for that little bit of pressure to come so they can bounce it through. And when the opposition doesn't press, that for me is where that football can get very, very stale very quickly. So whilst I think it's a good idea to use in moments, yes, and to play through teams who are definitely going to hop out and jump out at you, yes, it will work. But if that's your whole plan when it comes to playing, it can become a little bit static and a bit too much. And if a team does refuse to jump out, you do get that stagnated football where, you know, you're just refusing to move. And that is, for me, one of the questions that De Zerbi will have to answer, because I watched a lot of his Marseille games, even in the Champions League, and there is a lot of moments of a lot of possession, but not a lot to show for it. If we actually look at what's left of the season, there are 7 games left. I was doing before a bit of research about what the point survival rate may be. I think Spurs are looking about 37-ish points. And they have got Sunderland away, Brighton at home, Wolves away, Villa away, Leeds at home, Chelsea away, Everton on the last day. Can Spurs really pick up 7 points out of them games? And that, for me, is where the question comes. Because I can talk about the long-term vision of De Zerbi at the football club. I can talk about maybe what he's going to do next season. But he might not be there next season. He has to get the 7 points. And it's going to be very interesting because I don't think he's ever gone into a club this late before. And I don't think he's ever gone into a pressured environment quite like this one before. And I think if this goes wrong, if they get relegated with him in charge on the contract that's being rumoured, that could have serious implications on the next decade, potentially, of Spurs. And it's now down to, obviously, him, the players, the board, to string together enough wins to breach, to not get relegated. And I'm not sure if this is going to work. The one thing I will say is I'd be very optimistic as a Spurs fan, because you've now got Kulusevski coming, Mohamed Kudus coming back, which for me is probably a guaranteed 4 points towards the end of the season if he can get back up to running. You know, he's back on the grass. So if he can get back up and running for Spurs, I think he can somewhat save their season like he hasn't already in the first part. But yeah, it's really touchy at the moment, and there's a lot going on with disappointment, I will say. There's a lot going on. There's a lot to speak about. I think he's a great mind. I think he's a good tactical mind. But he's a spiky character. He's had fallings out before with a ball, with players. He's got these really bright ideas, but do them bright ideas suit the current makeup of the Tottenham team? I'm not really sure. If I compare it to what he was doing in the Premier League with like Caicedo and McAllister, 2 players who are maybe short distance passers who can do that, and then I look at the Spurs options in the centre, are they going to be that efficient at playing that certain brand of football to get dominance over teams? I'm not sure. And then if we're looking at the long balls, I think that's where I would look to. More of the Marseille plan than more of the Brighton plan. I think there will be longer balls, layoffs from the keeper right through to the number 9. And I think they will need the legs behind the number 9 and the 10 who stand up front to connect with them second balls. So Archie Gray and Sarr, for me, are the most mobile, in my opinion, to do that, to receive them second balls off Solanke, off Simmons, if they are to play 2 split like that. That's where I would look for. And then bigger, longer transitional attacks where they can get them carries in. They can give it to the wingers who are cutting in behind to the space. That's where I see Spurs really working under Zerbi in the short term, because I do think it's a very, very, very scattergun appointment to go along with their recruitment. But in the same manner, they have tried a lot of things and they haven't tried this yet. So by a lot of averages, maybe they can get one right. But yeah, let's see what happens. Let's see what happens. What do you make of the appointment? What do you make of him as a character in terms of the way he handles some of the stuff with the board, his players? Does that have a massive implication on what he's about to do at Spurs? Does that have a bigger say? I don't know. And can that reputation of him and his emotions and his character mash up well with a team that is under the cosh, low on confidence, heads are dropping? Is that what they need? Do they need a kick up the backside or do they need a arm around the shoulder? And I think Roberto De Zerbi is well more of a kick up the backside kind of manager. So let us know. Do you think he'll keep him up? I'm not sure yet, but thank you very much. Thank you very much for watching this episode of the Overlap Breakdown. If you did enjoy, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more analysis. And we'll be back next week here on the Overlap Breakdown. Thank you.